Donald Trump as president. That high disapproval number for Trump is a little bit different. As you say, we don't have a head-to-head here in ours, but we have Fox News polling over the last couple days that shows Donald Trump losing double digits to prospective Democratic opponents in 2020. And the other thing I would just point out, again, I mentioned the Fox News. The other big difference I think that jumps out at me is this. The reason, when you strip everything else away, I think that Donald Trump was able to get himself elected in 2016 was on Election Day. You took a certain type of voter, a voter who said, I have a negative view of Donald Trump and I have a negative view of Hillary Clinton. I don't like both of the candidates. Those voters broke decisively for Donald Trump. The margin in the exit poll was 47 for Trump and 30 for Clinton. They didn't like either, but they broke for Trump. In the new Fox News poll, they look at voters who say they don't like Trump and they don't like Biden. And right now in this Fox News poll, they are breaking for Biden by a 33-point margin. That's the biggest difference I've seen in polling right now.
That is a huge difference. And John Meacham, I really think historically, if historians can, when we get past this moment, look back at the Donald Trump campaign and presidency with a bit of detachment. It's very hard right now. But they may look back, just like they look back at 1980 with Ronald Reagan saying, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? They may look back at the 2016 campaign, and the phrase that fits that campaign the most tightly and was the most effective for him was, what do you have to lose? Of course, he was aiming at black voters, but there are a lot of white voters, a lot of rich bankers, a lot of other people, a lot of whatever, you name the demographic, Hispanic business people. A lot of people looked at that and said, well, you know, wait a second, he's right. The Bushes and the Clintons have not been a bargain over the past 30 years. What do we have to lose? That vanishes immediately when you're suddenly the guy that's sitting behind the desk in the Oval Office. He doesn't have that advantage, and now that advantage will go to Biden or Sanders or whomever wins the Democratic nomination.
Yeah. Well, whoever wins the Democratic nomination is the great X factor here. But the history of this, you're exactly right. There were 10 presidential elections between 1980 and 2016, and a Bush or a Clinton was on 80% of those national tickets, which is a really remarkable thing to sit back and think about. Steve just talked about one of the few years where one wasn't, both in 08 and 12. So it was I would argue, a reactive vote. You know, even if you voted for the incumbent, you weren't, by and large, doing it out of great positivity about him, as the numbers show. It was a case of, basically, they were saying to Washington, if you're going to act like a bunch of professional wrestlers, we'll send you one. And now people have seen what that's like. And the answer to what have you got to lose turns out to be quite a lot, culturally. And now, as we see the economy moving in the direction it seems to be moving, there may be even a more precise answer there. So the great question for the era is going to be, was 2016 an aberration, or was it the beginning of a significantly longer chapter of a reactive and nativist period of American politics?
Well, and if you just look at the demographics, if you just look at the data, if you just look at the numbers, it's going to be an aberration because the numbers do not add up to the brand of politics that Donald Trump is practicing having any lasting impact in American politics. It will not. And Mika, again, you look at not only the reelect, the 40% reelect. There are a lot of states where Donald Trump's doing extraordinarily well. In the Deep South and in some of the Plain states, but that reelect is far lower. In Michigan, it was in the low 30s last time I checked. In Wisconsin, low 30s. Pennsylvania, low 30s. He's upside down in those states, according to Fox News, upside down in all of those states, and it's getting actually beaten very badly by Bernie Sanders, a professed socialist. So he has a long way to go. And again, the most important thing, Mika, we were talking about this while you were scaling Mount Kilimanjaro. The most important thing to remember is, again, he's got a really strong economy going right now. And even with a strong economy, he's really struggling.
So can you imagine what would happen to those numbers if the economy took a tumble?
We certainly hope it doesn't. We hope the economy stays really strong. But you're right, though. That's what people are really worried about inside the White House right now.
Absolutely. President Trump, though, is pushing back about that. Growing concerns that you're hearing from inside the White House and from CEOs across the country of a possible recession. The president and some of his aides spent the weekend trying to downplay those worries following last week's volatility in the stock market. While preparing to depart New Jersey to return to the White House yesterday, Trump was asked about the likelihood a recession could be looming.
I don't see a recession. I mean, the world is in a recession right now. And although that's too big a statement.
But a lot of economists say that you should be preparing for a recession, that no president is immune from a recession, and that it's malpractice for the government not to be doing something.
Yeah, Phil, honestly, I'm prepared for everything. I don't think we're having a recession. We're doing tremendously well. Our rich. I gave a tremendous tax cut, and they're loaded up with money. When you go in and analyze the curve always means that about 2 years later, maybe you'll go in. That's a long time, 2 years. But I don't think so. Interest rates are low. I think I could be helped out by the Fed, but the Fed doesn't like helping me too much.
I sure don't see a recession. We had some blockbuster retail sales consumer numbers towards the back end of last week, really blockbuster numbers. And in fact, despite a lot of worries with the volatile stock market, most economists on Wall Street towards the end of the week have been marking up their forecast for the third and fourth quarter. That echoes our view. You know, what we've got here, consumers are working at higher wages. Right. They are spending at a rapid pace. They're actually saving also while they're spending. That's an ideal situation. So I think actually the second half of the economy is going to be very good in 2019.
Despite the strong talk by the president and his top aides, Jonathan Lemire, you have new reporting that suggests there are concerns within the administration over a possible recession and what it could mean for next year's election. Reading from your piece, quote, Trump advisors fear a weakened economy could hurt him with moderate Republican and independent voters who have been willing to give him a pass on some of his incendiary policies and rhetoric. And White House economic advisors see few options for reversing course should the economy start to slip. Jonathan adds, though Trump has expressed private worries about Wall Street, he is also skeptical about some of the weaker economic indicators, wondering if the media and establishment figures are manipulating the data to make him look bad. Trump's skepticism has been reinforced by White House officials who have long been inclined to only show him rosier economic assessments. The New York Times reiterates that view, writing, Trump has repeated the claims in private discussions with aides and allies, insisting that his critics are trying to take away what he sees as his calling card for re-election. Trump has been agitated in discussions about the economy and by the news media's reporting of warnings of a possible recession. The Times adds, Trump has said forces that do not want him to win have been overstating the damage his trade war has caused. And several aides agree with him that the news media is overplaying the economic fears, adding to his feeling of being justified. Joe, the question I have for you is the challenge for the media has been sometimes how to characterize the things that have come out of the president's mouth and the things that he's done and said in a way that is as objective as possible, as right down the middle as possible, because some of them are so incendiary. Some of the things he says are basically racist, and it's been difficult to just report on it because when you say what the president says, it sounds horrible. It's not us. It's him. He's got a very extreme